All right, welcome back to another edition of We Rise Fighting Labor podcast. We bring you today's labor news, history, and analysis from the U.S. and around the world. This is a podcast to listen to with your fellow workers organizing on the shop floor. This is a podcast to listen to before walking into your union meeting. As always, I'm Rico Rutia, here with my co-host Brian Pfeiffer. And in this episode, we bring you this week's labor news. Going to catch up on some news from the Teamsters, IATSE, the United Electrical Workers, Unite Here, updates from the United Kingdom, a journalist strike against Gannett, and much more. But first, as always, we like to kick things off with a little bit of culture. Tonight, I'd like to play a song called Who Is This America Them Speak of Today by Antibalas. And as the name suggests, this song entertains the idea of who or what is America. Is it Ronald McDonald? Is it Mickey Mouse? Is it a burger? Is it Nike? Is it the Spanish immigrant, the Dutch immigrant, the English immigrant, the pilgrim, the black man, the slave owner, CEO, CIA, IRS, some invisible lines in the sand, a flag, a song? Who or what is America? What is it? What is it?
Who is America? Let's speak up today. Who is America? Let's speak up today. Is it you or me or the next brother we know? Who is America? Let's speak up today. Let's speak up like my next door neighbor. Who is America? Who is America? Let's speak up today. But it can't be every brother, and the brother can't be him. Who is America? Let's speak up today. Is it Panama Donald? In him Mickey House? Or just eat him burger? Oh. Him who buy him Nike? Him who watching TV? Oh, I grow confused. Oh. I must ask again, who is this America? Let's speak up today. Tell me, who is this America? Let's speak up today. Is it indigenous America? One that first come live here? Is him original America? Oh, him live for peace and harmony. Oh, before immigration started. Before immigration started. Oh, here comes the Spanish immigrant. Here comes the Dutchman immigrant. Here comes the English immigrant. Here comes the Frenchman. Yeah, immigrants rule there. Here comes the Spanish immigrant. Here comes the Dutchman immigrant. Here comes the English immigrant. Here comes the Frenchman. Yeah, here comes the pilgrim, bitchy alien with no paper, with no green card. Oh, come with smallpox, come with rifles, come with land rights, and come with raising too. Them be first to say, this is America. I'll go America now. But I must ask again, I grow confused. Who is America? Let's speak up today. Who is America? Let's speak up today.
All right. Good evening, friends, fellow workers, to this edition of We Rise Fighting Labor podcast. We have a variety of events, activities, strikes, and other great work being done by workers across the world. I'm going to report on some of these tonight. And in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the ZAO, Milwaukee Church, with allies, pushed back bigots trying to attack a drag story hour. And members from a rainbow of progressive organizations in the metro Milwaukee area physically defended a drag story hour and family brunch celebrating Pride at ZAO Milwaukee Church June 10th. As bigots tried to disrupt the story hour, the church was defended by many, including union members. ZAO Milwaukee Church, in addition to supporting the LGBTQ plus community, supports unions and other workers' rights organizations, peace and justice organizations, and has provided space for events about Cuba and is a general resource for poor and working people in the Milwaukee area. And the church posted a quote on their Facebook page that states, quote, "Hate is not welcome here. Queer liberation is holy work. Our love and thanks to all the folks showing up to protect and stand with queer youth and families at the Drag Queen Story Hour at ZAO Milwaukee Church today. This is what the gospel looks like." Supporters of the LGBTQ community brought solidarity signs reading various slogans such as "Fight Racism and War, Not Drag Queen Story Hours." You can find video of the defense of the church at facebook.com, ZAOMKE. And it was a wonderful defense. And this is a great example of how we must defend fascist-minded individuals and racists and bigots, physically with our defense of our union halls, our churches, and other organizations that work for poor and working people. So solidarity to those who successfully defended the church. And also we wish them a happy Pride there in Milwaukee. There's going to be a variety of events this month and many other Drake Story Hours, and we're not stopping. We're going to continue the struggle. All right, Rick, you're up next.
All right, up next, a couple of news releases. The first one from the Teamsters. Just checking in to see what's up with UPS negotiations, and this is what the Teamsters released this week. This is directly from the press release. Local unions representing U.S. Teamsters will be conducting in-person voting this week for strike authorization. Voting yes will enable the Teamsters National Negotiating Committee to call a nationwide strike at UPS should the company fail to reach agreement on a strong new contract for more than 340,000 UPS Teamsters. All right, so this is a distinction that we always like to make here on this show, is when you vote yes to authorize a strike, you're just giving a body within the union the authorization, the power to call a strike when needed. You're not calling a strike by voting yes on an authorization. The press release continues. Strike authorization votes will be recorded in person at local union halls and the gates of UPS facilities. Results will be announced Friday, June 16th. So we will keep you posted on that for sure. UPS Teamster struggle is one that we've been following since last year, actually. Another news release comes from IATSE. IATSE is the stage handlers union. The headline of the press release reads, IATSE earmarks $2 million in support of members affected by ongoing WGA Writers Guild strike. So Los Angeles, California, the General Executive Board of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, IATSE, unanimously approved $2 million to be distributed through industry-recognized charities to support IATSE members in need during the ongoing writers' strike on Wednesday. These funds have been specifically earmarked for the Motion Picture and Television Fund, the Entertainment Community Fund, and the AFC. Those three are nonprofits that apparently help out actors and writers in Hollywood when things get tight. Back to the press release. IATSE International President Matthew D. Loeb said, quote, "For those who are struggling, you are not alone. The 170,000 kin of our alliance are with you and help is available. We trust these proven industry charities to deliver this much needed support directly to IATSE members who need it most. And we will continue to explore all avenues to provide necessary assistance to our members as they weather the storm during the writers' strike. These funds earmarked by the union will be specifically for IATSE members in need. More information about emergency financial assistance and other resources offered by these charities will be made soon." So that's the update on IATSE. Now, Brian, you have some updates on the United Electrical Workers as far as graduate student workers. What's going on with that?
Yes, we've been reporting on academic workers from coast to coast, north, south, east, and west. Academic workers are on the move. We've seen from Rutgers to California and all across the country with many unions. In this case, the United Electrical Workers, the fighting members of the UE, report on their Facebook page between January and April of this year, 2023, over 14,000, that's 14,000 graduate workers on 5 campuses across the country voted to join UE, all by margins of over 80%. And as we've noted many times, without these workers, graduate student workers, universities would absolutely collapse. And that includes as well, in addition to that, adjuncts. The latest issue of the UE News features accounts of all 5 campaigns written by some of the graduate workers who led them. And that's available at ueunion.org, ueunion.org, and just some of the few places that they've been organizing and have been successful are Northwestern grad workers, Johns Hopkins University, the University of Chicago, Dartmouth, Minnesota, and they continue to be active in places where they already were for a while, such as Iowa and other campuses across the country. These wins are in addition to over 5,000 graduate student workers at MIT in Boston affiliated with UE and winning their vote in the past year, in addition to the academic workers, grad student workers that the UE has been organizing. The UE has many other campaigns ongoing. One of them is in Erie, Pennsylvania. At WebTech in Erie, quote, 5 unions, UE, quote, 5 unions representing WebTech workers, WABTEC, from across the globe have written letters to the CEO, Rafael Santana, expressing their solidarity with members of UE Locals 506 and 618 and demanding that the company settle a fair contract at its locomotive plant in Erie, stated the union on its Facebook page. Letters were received from unions in Canada, Australia, Spain, and Italy. The members at Wabtec have authorized their bargaining team to call a strike if necessary. For more information, see UE social media and ueunion.org. And once again, we see the international power of workers from all over the world sending letters of solidarity to those workers in Erie. It's a wonderful way that we can join together and unite and support those workers on the verge of going out on strike there in Erie. All right, Rick, we're going to go to Unite Here, Southern California.
All right, yes. So news from Unite Here, Local 11, and this is another news release. This reads as follows. SoCal Hotel Workers authorize largest industry-wide strike in U.S. history, 96% vote yes. And this is the actual body of the press release. Los Angeles, California, the region's largest hospitality union, Unite Here Local 11, representing over 32,000 room attendants, cooks, dishwashers, front desk agents, servers, and food service workers, voted to authorize a strike today. Unite Here Local 11 could call us for a strike at dozens of hotels with more than 15,000 workers as early as July 4th weekend. This would be the largest hotel workers strike in modern U.S. industry. During the pandemic, hotels received $15 billion in federal bailouts and cut jobs in guest services such as daily room cleaning. In 2023, hotel profits in Los Angeles and Orange County exceeded pre-pandemic levels, yet hospitality workers continue to struggle to afford a place to live in the cities where they work. Top on the list of concerns for hotel workers is the rising cost of housing. In a Unite Here Local 11 survey, 53% of workers said that they either have moved in the past 5 years or move in the near future because of soaring housing costs. The strike authorization vote comes after more than a month of failed negotiations with hotel employers, including Hyatt, Hilton, Highgate, Acre, IHG, and Marriott. The union's key demands are an immediate $5 an hour wage increase to keep pace with the soaring cost of housing, affordable family health care, a pension that will enable workers to retire with security, and a safe and humane workload. Negotiations began on April 20th, but the hotel industry has yet to respond with any wage proposals. And here's a quote from one of the workers. Quote, I voted yes to strike because I commute 2 hours from my home to Apple Valley to downtown Los Angeles. I deserve to make enough money to live near where I work, said Brenda Mendoza, a uniform attendant at the JW Marriott LA Live. And another quote, or the quote continues rather. I am ready to strike for our affordable health care because my chronic illness will not wait, said Lupus Pitones, front office PBX, Westin Bonaventure Hotel. Another quote, hotel workers who work in the booming Los Angeles tourism industry must be able to live in Los Angeles, said Kurt Peterson, co-president of Unite Here Local 11. The industry shamelessly exploited the pandemic and is now reaping greater profits than ever before, yet workers cannot afford to pay the rent. This 96% vote to authorize a strike sends a clear message to the industry that workers have reached their limit and are prepared to strike to secure a living wage. Southern California will be the first city in modern history to host back-to-back the FIFA World Cup in 2026 and the Olympics in 2028. In recent decades, these mega sports events have left local governments indebted for years and have permanently displaced millions of poor residents. Unite Here Local 11 is calling on the industry and political leadership to use the events to transform tourism jobs into family-sustaining jobs and solve the housing crisis. So hats off to SoCal Hotel Workers. We're going to keep you posted on where that goes. That would be huge, honestly. All that activity in California, the SoCal Workers, the Writers Guild going on strike. You know, we were just reporting just several months ago about academic workers going on strike. Last month, we were reporting on teachers going on strike. So much happening in California. It would also be interesting to hear, you know, because for our understanding is that the Teamsters have respected the picket lines of the Writers Guild, you know, and just to see if the Teamsters go on strike, you know, have that solidarity reciprocated and how that pans out, you know, now with this additional possible strike. That would be something to see and something that the U.S. labor movement has not seen in a long time. So hats off to all these workers, hats off to all these struggles. We hope that they just get their demands, but if the gloves come off and everyone's on strike, man, that's going to be a sight. So we will keep you posted. And up next, Brian, we have some news from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. What's going on there?
All right, Rick, we have a big win here for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 494 in Milwaukee, and IBEW Local 1220 in Chicago. They are celebrating the ratification of Colectivo Coffee Workers' first union contract. And winning a first union contract is a big deal in this country. Over half the workers who vote for their union don't get a union contract, so this is a major significant advance. And they put out a press release on June 7th, the IBEW, and it says, quote, "History has been made. The workers of Colectivo Coffee have voted in favor of their first union contract with the owners and management of Colectivo Coffee Roasters. The partnership coined the Colectivo Collective, made up of the Colectivo Coffee Workers in the Milwaukee, Madison markets, who are represented by Local 494 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers in the Chicago market, who are represented by IBEW Local 1220, have negotiated, and the workers have voted to accept and ratify their first contract with more than 95% of voters in favor of acceptance."
Wow.
The start of this, yeah, it's a big deal, Rick. The start of this union organizing campaign dates back to mid-2020 with the National Labor Relations Board administered election taking place in the spring of 2021. Then in August of that year, the NLRB ruled the workers that successfully won their election and organized a union at the workplace with a majority of workers voting in favor of unionizing. Continues the press release by the IWW. At the time, this made Colectivo the largest unionized coffee chain in the U.S., and now after nearly a year of contract negotiations, these workers have not only unionized their workplace, they've also successfully negotiated their first collective bargaining agreement. And now with this past week's contract vote, have voted in favor of its ratification. And there's a quote by Hillary, a Milwaukee area Colectivo Coffee Cafe worker and original member of the organizing committee of the Colectivo Collective. She says, quote, "This contract ratification is the culmination of the effects of hundreds of workers over the past 3 years. We could not have made it to this point without their bravery, the tireless work of the folks at the IBEW, as well as the vocal support of thousands of customers and members of the community. I am beside myself with gratitude for all of them this week. I look forward to what the future holds for those of us behind the counter and throughout Colectivo Coffee." And that was Hillary from the Colectivo Coffee Collective and the IBEW. Great victory here in Milwaukee and Chicago, and we wish our workers well on their new contract. Solidarity with them, of course. And a lot more information is available at the Facebook pages, IBEW Local 494, and other social media, as well as the Colectivo Collective. All right, solidarity, fellow workers. Now we're going to hear from a journalist strike from Rick.
Yeah, so this article is coming in from the Associated Press. The headline is "Hundreds of Journalists Strike to Demand Leadership Change at Biggest U.S. Newspaper Chain." And the article reads as follows: New York. Journalists at 24 local newspapers across the U.S. walked off the job Monday to demand an end to painful cost-cutting measures and a change of leadership at Gannett, the country's biggest newspaper chain. The strike involves hundreds of journalists at newspapers in 8 states, including the Arizona Republic, the Austin American-Statesman, the Bergen Record, the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, and the Palm Beach Post, according to the News Guild, which represents workers at more than 50 Gannett newspapers. Gannett has said there would be no disruption to its news coverage during the strike, which will last for 2 days at 2 of the newspapers and 1 for the rest. The walkouts coincided with Gannett's annual shareholder meeting, during which the company's board was duly elected despite the News Guild CWA union urging shareholders to withhold their votes from CEO and board chairman Mike Reed as an expression of no confidence in his leadership. Reed has overseen the company since its 2019 merger with Gatehouse Media, a tumultuous period that has included layoffs and the shuttering of newsrooms. Gannett shares have dropped more than 60% since the deal closed. Susan de Carava, president of the News Guild of New York, called the shareholder meeting a, quote, slap in the face to hundreds of Gannett journalists who are on strike today, unquote. Gannett CEO Mike Reed didn't have a word to say to the scores of journalists whose livelihoods he's destroyed, nor to the communities who have lost their primary news source thanks to his mismanagement, de Carava said in the statement. In legal filings, the News Guild said Gannett's leadership has gutted newsrooms and cut back on coverage to service a massive debt load. Cost-cutting has also included forced furloughs with suspension of 401k contributions. This is a quote. "We want people in our community to know what this company is doing to local news, and we want Gannett shareholders to know what Gannett is doing to local news," said Chris Damian, a criminal justice reporter and unit guild chair at Desert Sun, which covers Palm Springs and the surrounding Coachella Valley in Southern California. The Gannett strike coincided with an open-ended strike being staged by 250 unionized U.S. employees at Insider Inc., a global company that publishes Business Insider. Members of the Insider Union, which formed in 2021 and is represented by the News Guild of New York, called for a strike after failing to reach a first contract agreement with the company. So that's it on Gannett and journalists there. Brian, what's up next with North Carolina? You got some news from there.
Yes, We Rise Fighting listeners, last year, if you haven't heard the episode, please check it out. We interviewed the leadership, a couple of the leaders from Black Workers for Justice and the United Electrical Workers of North Carolina, and they are leading an effort along with many other coalition partners on June 14th, 2023, statewide day of outrage at the state capitol in Raleigh, North Carolina, and this follows up from a May 31st day of outrage. On June 14th, there will be a noon press conference in the legislative press room, 12:30 to 4, People's Lobby Day, 6 p.m. mass rally and People's Power Assembly, and that's at 16 West Jones Street in the Raleigh State Legislature. And this is going to be followed up on Saturday, July 1st, day of action in cities, towns, counties across the state of North Carolina. In Charlotte, Cabarrus County, Asheville, Greenville, Goldsboro, Winston-Salem, Durham, Raleigh, Fayetteville, Wilmington, Rocky Mount, and Buettner, which will be on 6/28. But on July 21st, there will be days of action in all of those cities. And then North Carolina People's Power Coalition is a coalition of many progressive unions, community organizations, student organizations, LGBTQ plus organizations, women's rights organizations, and so on, which represents over 80 of these organizations, hosted the inaugural rally last Wednesday, May 31st, at the state legislative building, and members were in attendance from every corner of the state. The major demands include invest in our children, fund healthcare, keep your bans off our bodies, reproductive justice now, defend voting rights, union yes, uproot racism, support the LGBTQ community, and environmental justice. And under those demands, there's very specific additions to that. There's more information at the North Carolina People's Power Coalition, and they're taking it to the streets and taking matters into their own hands as poor and working people and not relying on simply parliamentary measures. And these actions will escalate throughout the summer. This is the type of action we need to see all over the country to stop these racist right-wing attacks that are happening in just about every state, especially against LGBTQ community, but also workers. Many of the provisions from the pandemic now are no longer in effect. Student loans might be going back into effect for payments. So this action is right on time and a great model for the rest of the country in a variety of ways. So we send them all solidarity there in North Carolina. And now, as part of our international focus on workers, we're going to go to the UK. What do you got for us, Rick?
All right, so got an article here. It's from the BBC, and the headline reads as follows: strike dates. Who is striking and what pay do they want? You know, what I appreciated about this article is the list of workers who are or have been or will be striking, and this in the UK. So the list includes junior doctors, rail workers, nurses, teachers, passport office workers, civil servants, and university staff. You know, these are bullet points to bullet points, basically. So it gives us a scoop on what's going on, you know, with each sector of these workers. So for junior doctors, for instance, junior doctors in England will strike for 72 hours from Wednesday, June 14th to Saturday, the 17th of June. The British Medical Association said junior doctor roles have seen pay cuts by 26% since 2008 once inflation is taken into account. To reverse that, they want a 35% pay increase, which the government has says is, quote, unreasonable in the current economic context, unquote. Next is rail workers and the bullet points for them. There has been a series of strikes by members of the RMT and ASLEF unions. RMT members working for 14 train companies held their most recent strike on Friday, June 2nd. The unions are in dispute with the government and rail companies about pay, job cuts, and changes to terms and conditions. Onward to nurses. Members of the Royal College of Nursing Union in England held a 24-hour strike which ended at midnight on May 1st. Nurses in England are included in a deal reached on May 2nd, offering a 5% pay increase and a one-time payment of at least £1,655. A majority of unions accepted the offer, but Unite and two other unions rejected it and are threatening more strikes. Nurses across nearly all parts of Wales held a 12-hour strike on June 6th and 7th. In Scotland, union nurses have accepted an offer worth an average of 6.5% for the years 2023 and 2024. Onward to teachers. In the UK, members of the National Education Union in England went on strike April 27th and May 2nd. The unions want above inflation increases plus extra money to ensure any pay raises do not come from schools' existing budgets. In Northern Ireland, 5 teaching unions went on strike on April 26. Passport office staff. Passport office staff belonging to the PCS union took action for 5 weeks in April and May. The union is asking for a 10% pay raise, improved redundancy terms, better pensions, and assurances of job security. They say the government has offered a pay raise averaging 4.525% for the year 2023. Onward to civil servants. Public and Commercial Services, PCS, union members took action on June 6th in Northern Ireland and June 7th in Wales. They have taken action for months and there have been 3 national walkouts. PCS is calling for a 10% pay increase, better pensions, job security, and no cuts to redundancy terms. The Prospect Union, which has more than 32,000 civil service members, has paused planned strike action after the government offered to engage in quote-unquote meaningful talks over pay. And finally, university staff. Members of the University and College Union, the UCU, have been striking at 150 universities across the UK. That's incredible. In April, the union renewed its mandate for industrial action for another 6 months. The dispute is about pay, casual contracts, pensions, and workloads. And you know what? I have to admit, one of the reasons that I chose this article in the first place is because, time after time, it talks about these unions being on strike for economic reasons, for wage increases. And here in the US, that's economic strikes, although they are legal, they don't offer the same level of protection as, for instance, a strike for an unfair labor practice, which I think, Brian, and you can tease this out with me here, Dialectics at Work, but I think that kind of sets a tone where economic strikes are therefore less desirable or therefore less approachable and less practiced. Almost to me, ever since learning this stuff, almost to the point where it's shied away from as a tactic, a strike strictly for economic reasons in the US. I don't know what you've seen out there, Brian, or what your experience has been with this, but this is why I wanted to highlight this article, is just to let people know here in the US, yes, it is perfectly okay to go on economic strikes. It makes complete and total reason, despite the fact that, US labor laws protect other strikes with greater protections, offer more protections to other strikes. It is still perfectly reasonable to go on economic strike. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Brian? Do you see any of what I'm saying, or?
I think that, of course, we have to work within various arenas, such as where our workers at any given time. But we are in agreement, of course, that the workers' demands are whatever demands they are. They have the right to strike, whether it's legal or not. And of course, we have to take considerations into account, such as a union potentially being sued for various things. But in my view, the workers' lives are more important than their families' lives and loved ones more important. So if they need to go on strike for economic reasons or whatever reasons they may be, they should be supported by the community, and it benefits everyone. And we will deal with the legal situations that we need to deal with, but we have to be on the move for whatever we deserve, and we deserve everything.
Yeah, I mean, of all things, no one wants to go on economic strike like that. If you're not being paid enough already, who wants to go on strike on top of that? So yeah, that's when the struggle is on. So hats off, that's why we cover other labor movements around the world, is to learn from them, to be inspired by them. to help us think through some of our own labor laws here in the U.S., which are tilted in favor of the employers. So that's why we present stuff like this. Hopefully it inspires some folks. Here in the U.S., for instance, last year when the railway workers were set to strike, it was a bit of a controversy, I guess, if you can call it that, or some people didn't know exactly where it fell. A lot of people were pointing to that it could be illegal and all that. But, during the course of our podcast, several times we've reported on railway worker strikes in Europe. And so these sorts of things happen, these sorts of things can be brought here. We can learn from their struggles and, execute them here.
That's right.
So that's the update from the United Kingdom. Brian, you're up next, bringing us back to Florida. So what's going on there with the National March?
All right, Rick, thanks. As listeners might be aware, that there is a full-scale attack on the LGBTQ plus community, in particular, transgender people, many of whom are workers. And there will be a national march to protect trans youth, speak out for trans rights, October 7th, 2023 in Orlando, Florida, to push back against these right-wing, bigoted, and racist and anti-worker attacks as well, because of course the same rich people and their servants that are attacking the transgender community are the same ones who are trying to gut unions and attack unions in Florida and every other progressive rights that we have won over the course of history there. And that includes civil rights as well. So protecttranskidsmarch.org. That's protecttranskidsmarch.org and womeninstruggle.org. Womeninstruggle.org has flyers and a variety of more information. And for listeners' information, the demands, there's many, but they're generally, the main demands are reverse DeSantis's bans. That's Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, who's now running for U.S. president. And his intent, of course, is to take the policies he's been able to slam through in Florida through the right-wing legislature and his signature. He is intent on trying to take those national. And end attacks on marginalized communities, stop censorship and attacks on civil liberties. And that means stop the book bans, demand federal government enforce the civil rights in Florida and all throughout the South and everywhere else, free, legal, accessible abortions, expand Medicaid and SNAP, stop voter disenfranchisement, and drop the charges on the Tampa 5. And of course, the March supports workers' rights and unions, and we are in solidarity with them here, and we'll do what we can to promote this very, very important initiative, National March to Protect Trans Youth, Speak Out for Trans Rights, October 7th, 2023 in Orlando, Florida. So solidarity with our friends and fellow workers, and especially the LGBTQ plus community in Florida and elsewhere. And to hell with DeSantis, and we're going to march, and we're going to engage in some direct actions, and hopefully start setting down some profits in this country. All right, Rick, that's the end of the reports for today.
That is the end of the reports for today. So thank you, everyone, for chiming in, for listening in. Have a good night, everyone.